Welcome, closers and contractors, to the Profits for Sanity podcast. I'm your host, Dominic Caminata, CEO of Grosso University and industry-leading sales trainer. In the world of business, we firmly believe that volume is for vanity and profit is for sanity. And the mission of this podcast is very simple: to bring on the brightest minds in the home improvement and home services industry that can educate our listeners on how to grow and scale a more profitable business. Today, we have an extraordinary guest that I'm super excited to talk to, who has truly mastered the art of the in-home sale at a very young age and has an impressive track record in the home improvement industry. He's going to be dropping absolute bombs in this podcast, so make sure you get your notepads out, get your popcorn ready. It's going to be a good one. And starting his sales journey at just 11 years of age, our guest, Bobby G, or Bobby Goglio, and his relentless drive and pursuit for talent in sales led him to become a top performer in many different door-to-door sales roles. And his transition in the home improvement industry was guided by a mentor of mine, someone near and dear to the Grosso University family, Rick Grosso himself. And over the past 2 decades, he's mastered the one-call close sales process, selling things like vinyl windows, selling gutter protection. As a matter of fact, in his final year, Bobby became the top income earner for the leaf filter network. Out of 2,677 independent sales representatives, he was the top income earner. Today, Bobby offers advanced sales training through his platform, Next Level Sales Mastery, and he's here to share his wealth of knowledge and experience to help home improvement companies just like you grow a more profitable business. So first of all, Bobby, I just want to thank you very much for driving down here to our Grosso studio, and I want to announce publicly, Bobby is our first podcast that we've ever filmed in our brand new studio, so thank you very much for that.
Very nice.
So, and you drove down from the Dells, right?
I did.
It's nice to have not only an industry legend in my studio, but a local Wisconsinite as well.
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me on and sending me that invite. You know, this kind of has taken full circle that you and I spoke of, that when I graduated from that, it was my mentor the first time ever in home improvements was Rick Grosso. So I want to thank you for carrying on that legacy and changing the way and continuing to help salespeople grow on a high skill level so that they're not just putting pressure on people.
So Bobby, if you don't mind, obviously you have an incredible background and experience. And one thing I absolutely admire, I always love when people have a background in door-to-door and then they get into one-call closing, and the ability to overcome constant rejection and people slamming doors in your face. Like, you develop quite the obstacle immunity against being rejected, right? But kind of going back to 11 years old, how did that start, selling magazines door to door? And then what are some of the things, the skills you think you learned at a young age that you still carry with you to this day?
Well, I wasn't the cute 11-year-old kid, so I didn't get rejected less, that's for sure. There was a group of guys that basically came through the community, and they would talk to different kids in the community, ask them if they wanted to make some money, give them a little script that they had to follow, and we went in a van and we went out and went door to door. What I found, you asked, how does that carry over into sales now, and what did I get? Very much of what you talked about, right? They used to tell us that we had to develop alligator skin. Now, when I think of those things that took place back then, it goes to how today we have to extract ourselves from the emotions of that sale, right? We have to learn how to deal with those rejections and understand that those rejections are not rejecting us, but they're just rejecting that offer of that product or that service at that time. Yeah. That, at 11 years old, was like the Green Beret of sales, right? Because at that time, you're the most impressionable. You're not handling rejection as well as maybe you should. You may be a little more insecure and waffling at that age. But I feel like doing that at that age was an absolute privilege and kind of was the segue of where I am today. Yeah. And dealing with that rejection and knowing that that next door could be it, that next door could be it, and learning very early on to, shake it off, shake it off. I feel absolutely privileged that I started out in door-to-door that way, because it enabled me to learn how to deal with rejection quickly. Now at 11, I didn't know that I was emotionally, extracting myself or detaching myself from the situation. But in order to succeed doing that at that time, that's something that I had to do.
Yeah, that's amazing. I actually preach that to a lot of owners is if your salespeople are having a hard time going for the no, obviously going for true rejection, because let's be honest, in outside sales in this industry, what I'm seeing is very few salespeople actually get rejected. They get objections. Now, there's a big difference between an objection and being rejected, right? And you get rejected a lot in door-to-door because you're interrupting people. In outside sales, they have a preset appointment. They're expecting you, right? They have at least some sort of understanding as to the terms of the meeting. And they understand that you're going to be walking through your process. So, but a lot of salespeople, unfortunately, they pack it up and leave over objections, right? But the problem is, though, psychologically, salespeople fear objections in the same way they fear being rejected. And they never really fully develop that obstacle immunity they need to tighten up their belt, throw away the wishbone, grow a backbone, go for the no with a relaxed assertive confidence. And that's what, with what you were exposed to at a young age, you're able to kind of develop that strong obstacle immunity, that alligator skin. Absolutely. And what a phenomenal, priceless gift to have in outside sales. Because I just read a study recently, they said 82% of consumers buy after the fourth objection, after the fourth no. Yet most salespeople give up after one or two no's, one or two objections. If you could just be a little bit more assertive, a little bit more confident, a little bit more obstacle immunity, go for the no a couple more times, you tap into a vast ocean of opportunity where most people buy. And I don't know if you know my background, but when I first got into sales, again, my first month I struggled. I sold like 45,000 net, and my second month wasn't much better. I only sold 49,000, and quite honestly, I was on the chopping block. Thankfully, I was competitive though. And I had this salesperson that went through the same class with me. This guy was highly annoying. I couldn't stand to hear the guy talk. The thing is, the month I sold 49,000, he wrote up 115,000. Along with being highly annoying, he's really cocky, like rubbing it in my face. Oh, I can't stand this guy outselling me. I said, you know what? Screw this. I have nothing to lose. I'm either walking out with a sale from now on, or I'm getting physically removed from the house. They're gonna have to call the cops. I'm going to get fired anyway. I have nothing to lose, right? And that's where the epiphany happened. I realized with that newfound thick skin, that alligator skin, I was walking out with sales. I wasn't getting thrown out at all. I was walking out with orders, contracts. There you go. I'm like, that was the missing link. I was too timid. So yeah, that is such a priceless background. And then obviously advancing still at a crazy young age, 16 years old, right? You started selling vacuum cleaners. How did that transition take place? And what were some of the lessons learned now doing in-home presentations and things like that?
So that's a great question. And it was kind of instrumental because things kind of changed there from a sales perspective. I'm a little older, right? I got the alligator skin. I'm doing well. But the thing that really transitioned was understanding results-based selling. Because I'm not just there selling a vacuum cleaner, I'm selling the results that vacuum cleaner presents. We're not selling drills.
We're not selling what it is, we're selling what it does.
We're selling what it does. Yeah. So the big transition with vacuum cleaners, it was a bigger ticket sale. So I needed to understand that sales process a little better. I needed to listen to the mentors that I had in order to figure out what that system was.
What was their training like when you first got into like Rainbow and Kirby? I'm just curious. Was it pretty high level or was it pretty basic?
Both. I think it was basic, but it was high level because one of the things that I endorse now big time is role play. Yeah. And what they had us doing was constant role play.
Drills for skills, yeah.
A lot of drills for skills. As Rick Ross would say, practice, 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 repetition creates retention.
Hear his voice in my mind.
Yeah, I can't quite do it as well as him, but boy, I remember that practice, 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 for sure.
How do you get to Carnegie Hall, right?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I like to say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. People are trying to eat the elephant whole when it comes into sales instead of breaking it down. But they had phenomenal, and we were kids too, right? So we listened to what they were saying. We didn't question what they were saying. And if they were a little aggressive with the role play, they wanted it right, back and forth and back and forth. So that was what was great about it. And that, like I said, brought me to a place where I really understood that I'm not just selling the benefits. I'm not selling all the great things it does and the flips and the switches on this, but I'm really selling what it does. And to base the presentation on Kirby, it's drawn all of the dust mites out of there. So if you got allergies or if you got, sicknesses in the home, it's going to help that. So just
Lifestyle, personal enjoyment, you're keen to all the emotional reasons why they desire this product or service that you're offering, right? Yes. And that's what's lacking. There's so many people that they're just so factual and logical about how they sell instead of keen to the emotional reasons why people want it, right? People don't buy what they need, they buy what they want. And that whole aspect of passion and desire is kind of lacking in the world right now. A lot of people, in terms of the masterful presentation, they're kind of falling into this trap more of an order-taking type sales model and selling on price and
drop.
I will never stop believing that the best close in the world is a masterful presentation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't care how technology, AI, all this stuff, I know for certain that now more than ever, we got to be super dialed in on how we're creating need, want, desire. Again, I always love when Rick said the homeowner should say 3 things after your presentation. I want it, I want it, I want it. Yeah. But that's something that needs to be worked on, needs to be extensively trained in this whole element of role playing. Often in organizations, I see they have a pretty decent initial onboarding and training experience. It's okay. But then there's almost no post-training molding and support for these reps. And a lot of these reps that get out there and start running leads independently, and they're literally alone on an island by themselves with no support. They're not getting together with their peers. So that's a reflection of leadership, right?
It is.
So leadership needs to cultivate that type of culture where your peers, everyone, your team, everyone's getting together as a mastermind group, and we're growing together as a unit, right? Teamwork makes the dream work.
Absolutely.
You're going to have minimal results if you're just trying to wing this and do it on your own. I don't know if it's ego or whatever it is, but a lot of people try to do things. I'm a lone ranger. I only work alone, You're only holding yourself back. Absolutely. So that's a great lesson to take away from that experience. When you're 11 and 16, in that time frame, having that success selling, how do you think that impacted your school or just your confidence level as a young kid or a young man?
Overwhelming change. I was like a super nerd, super quiet, super small, super timid. I tell people that I got bullied so much the nerds picked on me, right? Even they picked on me. It just changed the quality of my life completely, right? And I think that is part of why you and I do what we do. It's one thing to teach and train salespeople to get better at making money, right? But I think that, I'm sure you'd agree, that we see lives change just the way that I was. It absolutely changed my life, especially when I graduated to frozen food sales, which I'm sure might be one of the questions.
Yeah, that's definitely next in line. Obviously, as you transition from vacuum cleaners to frozen food sales, what made that transition possible, and what were some of the things that were different, unique, and lessons learned going to that different type of product or service?
I think that one of the biggest things that changed at that time was that I started to understand systems, right? I started to understand that, I didn't or couldn't just wing it every time I went into a home. I started to realize that there were some things that I said every time I was in the home. So I started to say to myself, maybe since those things are working, if I start to implement more of those same things and kind of create a system. I don't think I was calling it a system back then, really. But when I started to develop a system, I learned to do the same thing over and over again without bias to the result.
Building sales muscle memory. So basically you create success patterns in your mind that are replicatable and duplicatable. And it's just if I want to learn how to shoot a basketball, right? I'm going to get to a regulation size court, a regulation basketball. I'm going to do thousands of repetitions, different parts of the court. If I want to work on my free throws or my 3-pointers or my hook shot, whatever, do thousands of repetitions. And the goal is not to focus on the shots you missed. It's recreating what happened when you made the basket. Yeah. And this is what a lot of salespeople, in my opinion, don't spend enough time doing. Absolutely. They tend to dwell on their negative results, my pitch and misses, and then it kind of bogs them down. You get stinking thinking. Are you spending time after you close a sale journaling those results and writing down as much as you can? What the hell did you just do? And I want to continue to build on those successes, because if it worked once, it could potentially work again. And then you start creating these success patterns in your mind, and then you build upon it. It's replicatable. And then you don't have to think about it. You get, just like an athlete playing basketball, they've shot that basket so many times that it's muscle memory. Absolutely. So you build the same sales muscle memory. It's like a tattoo on the brain.
Indeed. In fact, Dave Yoho, who's the other OG in the industry, right? One of the Titans for sure. He once said to me, this was quite some time ago, he said the same thing you did about people making a mistake, about doing these autopsies on dead sales all the time, and just constantly those. He said, you know what? I'll just ask you something. What do you think the federal government does when they're trying to find counterfeit money? Guess what they study? You think they study all the different counterfeits out there? Or do you think they study the real deal? Yeah, the real deal. They study the real deal. And that's kind of the same concept. So most people are looking for what they did wrong out there, when really they should be looking for what they do right. Correct. Right? Just like you were talking about the compassion that our world needs, right? And I think that it's kind of the same thing. I think that when somebody is taught through a sales training program to be looking for those things that are right in their sale, that moves over to their life, right? Because sometimes we as sales trainers, we become psychologists and marriage counselors as well. And it's the same thing in a marriage, right? If you're looking for what's wrong in your wife,
You'll always find it.
You'll always find it. But guess what? If you're looking for what's right consistently, you'll always find it, right? And now you just talked about building, muscle memory, right? Now you've built muscle memory, and instead of looking for what's wrong with your wife, you're going to look for what's right.
Yeah.
So it converts over from sales into life as well, which is, I think you'd agree, where we both get the most gratification, the impact.
I'm constantly preaching, like, to be a top performing salesperson, to be a shining star. Obviously, learning sales is good, but it also requires being just a good person.
Yes.
Now, you got more systematized when you got into the seafood and like selling the steak, lobster, and all that stuff. And then when was that first transition into like home improvement selling, and when did you first get exposed to the Grosso system?
There was a part of the frozen food sales. It was down south where I was doing it, that they kind of said, hey, come down south if you want to do this. This is where we're having the most success. And one of the biggest things I learned was cherry picking. When we were doing door to door was, what does the house look like? What are the kind of cars in the driveway, right? So I would see that all the time because we're driving these trucks in these neighborhoods, and most of the time there'd be two of us in a truck. And one time we went up, I think it's Sand Mountain or something out in Atlanta. Okay. And we get up to the top, and there's a trailer up there that has literally no doors. It's sitting like this. The kids are running around in the neighborhood, and let's just say around their nose and mouth wasn't very clean, right? Yeah. Long story short, I didn't want to pitch that guy, right? Guess what he bought? Everything. Now Bobby G coined what was now and forever called the freezer deal.
Oh, I love it.
I come from the philosophy that if you can convince yourself that your only job is to give a masterful presentation every time, if it happens to be, in-home sales and you're on the porch, or for some reason you can't get in the door, and I teach people how to get in the door because I got in the door and door to door, right? Exactly. Yeah, but if you,
a lot of time doing that.
I did. And if your goal is just to do that masterful presentation every single time, that's when the law of averages is going to catch up.
Those are the two promises I made to myself before I went to every house, just because obviously I was programmed at the beginning of my sales career by Rick, master presentation. So I made two promises because I also believe in making people feel good, making people feel special. So 100%. I'm going to deliver the best presentation these people have ever seen in their life. That was number one. And number two, I'm going to make them feel like the most important people in the world for the next couple hours. I'm going to make them feel special. And I promise you, if you can just accomplish those two things, you're going to walk out with a lot of sales.
We have to the program because, I feel the same way. Mm-hmm. And we have to understand as salespeople, right? Yeah. As we go in there, a lot of times people are just leading that same boring humdrum life, or they're in that situation where they just don't get enough buildup. They just don't have enough people celebrating them. They don't have enough people, being graceful with them. I mean, I like to live by the philosophy of leaving every single individual that I meet better off than when I met them.
Because let's just be honest. I mean, look at the world that we live in now. There's so much negativity just bombarding people from all directions. And it's hard to live nowadays. People struggling to make ends meet, working multiple jobs, high levels of stress.
Yeah.
So, and look at customer service as a whole. Like, go travel somewhere and tell me how special you feel, right?
Yeah.
So you may be the one person in months or even years that took the time to make them feel heard, understood, make them feel special for that moment. And then obviously you become that person where they want to give their business to you. Yeah. And I love it when people are like, I hope you get a good commission for this because you've earned it. Like, they really want to support you and what you're doing, That's a great feeling.
Yeah.
So now transitioning now, obviously amazing background at a young age, developing that alligator skin. And then, of course, transitioning now into home improvement selling. When did that transition take place?
2004. Okay. Now, 2004, I wanted to transition into the home improvement business because I had talked to somebody that was doing well in it, but I wanted to apply my forte. And I thought, well, since I'm so good at door to door, why don't I create some teams that can do that?
Yep.
I think I shared with you earlier that, they call them all canvassers, right? The door-to-door guys, canvassers.
Yeah. That's a really nasty term. It's like a call handler instead of an inside sales position or something like that. Yeah. Exactly. Brand ambassador.
And it makes me deviate to another subject where I'd like to somehow, shock the restaurant industry into stop calling waiters and waitresses and servers, right? Like canvassers, I communicated to these people and these teams that I put together that, guys, guess what? If it's not for you, this business doesn't exist. If it's not for you, the salespeople have nothing to sell. They don't have the appointment. So I changed it over to public relations associate, right? Public relations associate. I used to tell them, guys, you are the face of this company. Yes. You are the infomercial for this company. So I wanted to develop a team of people that I could kind of branch out or bring to a company.
Even when you're recruiting for people to go door to door, that just sounds way more appealing. Yeah. Like, even if I saw a canvassing opportunity and your public relations opportunity right next to each other, I'd be like, this sounds a lot more high level.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love it.
And you kind of get what you expect out of life, out of people. Whether you feel you're going to fail or succeed in any given thing, you're usually right? And when I'm lifting those people up, those people did their job differently. They did it better. They took the job more seriously, and they were the best of the absolute best, right? So the first place I tried to do, I didn't say tried, first place I successfully did that with was Cool View Four Seasons, out of McFarland. It was with Al Anderson, absolute wonderful man. I love him to death. But what happened was when I did that, there's always two types of people in home improvement companies that start up those businesses, right? The first type is an installer. And he's like, man, I want to open my own home improvement company. He opens his home improvement company and the installation thrives, right? But there's not a whole lot of sales.
It's exactly the types of clients that come to us, right? Because one thing I've done at Grosso University, I've surrounded myself with really intelligent consultants and trainers that can show, like, if they need back-end support, if they need front-end support, or anywhere in between. And it's funny because the people that do come from sales, they come to us for operations and installation, labor acquisition support. And the guys that started up where they were a tenured installer, very skilled in the trades, they're like, I don't even know where to begin when it comes to sales. And then we build their sales foundation for them. So I can definitely relate to how you break that in.
High level, exactly. That's for sure. You absolutely do. So the second type, like you mentioned, is the person that comes from sales. And they're missing out on the installation operational level, like you said, they usually help people with. We were going door to door, generating these leads and appointments, and I'm funneling these appointments down. I mean, even to the point I was hardcore. Hey, well, let me ask you this. I mean, if we could show you a way how you could save between 15 and 20% on these windows, not only save money, but potentially get the windows free. Is this something you'd consider replacing all the windows in your house at some point? I'm scrubbing this on the phone.
How many salespeople would love to run those leads right now?
Right? Who would love to run those now? Now it's like, you need the 6-inch gutter. Okay, great. We'll send a guy out there, right? There's not a whole lot of scrubbing and getting that quality lead down there. So I'm doing this. All of their salespeople at Coolview Four Seasons came from installation.
Okay. Yeah.
So how do you think they handled those nebulous leads that were acquired door to door?
Tank on them. Yeah. Crash and burn.
Those leads are suspect. Come on, door to door leads, and this old highfalutin Bobby G coming in, right? So that didn't work. So I said to Al, Al, obviously this isn't going to work. They're at a 6% closing ratio. We've been doing this for 90 days. So here's what I'm going to do. I have never sold any home improvements before. I'm going door to door to door. And I said, all I need to do is find somebody and mirror and model those people. So I just need you to find somebody who's doing it and doing it well in windows or sunrooms and refer me to them. And I'm going to go out there for a couple weeks, learn it. I'm going to come back. I'm going to take these same nebulous leads after 30 days, and I'm going to go out and sell 10. I'm going to go out and I'm going to sit 10 of these same leads and or appointments, and I'm going to close 7 in windows, right? And I'm jacking at this point, right? I'm building myself up too, right? And he says, well, I know this guy, Jay. He works with a guy named Nick Richmond out in Flint, Michigan. I'm like, Flint, Michigan? Okay, great. That's where I'm going then, right? And moved on with Coolview Four Seasons. We planted and grew a window department to, I think, like $4 million in, I think, a year. And going from $150 average sale to now closing at 70% with a $12,500 average sale, and being in the home for 10 or 15 minutes versus hour and a half to 2.5 hours most of the time. It was a big deal. I was really proud of it. I really liked Al, and it created a really successful little spot there for him in his window department.
I see that more and more now, companies looking to get brand ambassadors, public relations advisors, canvassing. They're trying to build those face-to-face, boots on the ground divisions now because people are realizing, like, I can't farm for leads anymore. I got to go hunting for them. Yeah. And I actually, when we first launched canvassing at Mad City, my salespeople did not do very well running those because they're used to the media-driven inbound type leads where there's already a lot of urgency and interest and they're super qualified and confirmed, as you were talking about. It never occurred to them that the urgency wasn't already there, the desire wasn't already there. So they had to obviously be more systematic, get more dialed in so they can take that more nebulous style lead and actually make it an incredible opportunity. And once it clicked for them, like the nuances of running these door-to-door type leads, it became the most desirable lead source that we had because they're competitive. They can mold the situation to their favor. They're typically more profitable than media-driven. And we ended up closing those at the highest level of any lead source. So, but there's a learning curve, right? It takes a minute. It's just simply sales reps, getting more dialed in, accepting that you got to follow the system more closely in order to have success there. Because the things that we're used to walking into a house being a given, those is not necessarily given on door-to-door leads. Right? You gotta create urgency. You gotta create desire. You gotta make sure you're really selling what's in it for them, what your product's going to do for them more so than what it is, right?
Every time I say it and teach it, I think of Rick.
Yep.
He talks about practice. When it comes to a nebulous lead, you got to approach it differently, and you got to create trauma.
Yeah, it's cycle of motivation. Yeah, pain and trauma. Because people don't go from problem to solution, right? We are pleased to announce our all-new Grosso University 60-Day Challenge. For the first time ever, we are inviting companies nationwide to enroll a salesperson and a sales leader into our next Sales Academy Masterclass absolutely free. Our team of legendary trainers will take them through our comprehensive 2-week sales training where every student will be tested and certified as a sales warrior. After the live training event, every sales warrior will also receive a full 60-day trial access to all of our Sales Academy Masterclass services, which will give them access to our industry-leading online sales training platform, access to our live weekly sales meetings from our certified coaches, and one-on-one product-specific training and support to guarantee that every salesperson truly turns into a shining star in the industry. The best part is you can experience all of this training absolutely free with no obligation. Schedule a call today with one of our representatives and learn how Grosso University can easily become the sales training arm of your business and take your company to the next level. I'm honored to announce that this November 14th and 15th, Grosso U will be hosting our third annual Growth and Profitability Summit. Join us at the stunning Omni Resort and Spa in Amelia Island. You'll learn all about lead generation and conversion, leveraging the latest and greatest technologies, and the proven strategies for streamlining your operational efficiency. Network with industry leaders, forge valuable relationships, and return back to your business equipped to make 2025 a year of abundance and prosperity. Are you ready to build an apex level company? Reserve your seat at the Goglio Growth and Profitability Summit today and lead the future of the home improvement industry. Because people don't go from problem to solution, right? So you got to create awareness, pain, and trauma, fear of loss, all that stuff. So yeah, definitely more of a strategy to it. Then of course, getting into your kind of the tail end of your career, and that's an amazing story, by the way. I just think of like this industry is so special in so many ways. One thing that I think about a lot is how I believe most people that are in this industry discovered it by accident. A lot of people, I discovered it by accident. I was actually applying to be an estimator for a construction company on Craigslist. Okay. And I came across this ad by Mad City, a rare opportunity, where it's like in-home estimates, home improvements. And never expected, even after graduating college, that I'd be in sales or in this industry at all. But once you get into this industry, you tend to stay, because it's just, in my opinion, one of the best possible opportunities for people to make their own American dream come true. Like, you can literally, if you have the right work ethic and ambition and drive, and you know, if you got the right work ethic and perseverance and all this stuff, you can literally do anything you want to do. Sky's the limit, nothing holding you back. And just to see that time and time again, these salespeople or installers or these entrepreneurs coming in, just making legacy wealth for themselves in this business is truly special. But at the tail end of your career, especially in 2018, this is what I really love about, this is profits for sanity, right? Yeah. And profitability, and I've been more blunt when I train salespeople now that closing is great, right? Lord knows we love talking about closing, but most of you suck ass at negotiating, right? If you're a 60% closer and you're selling jobs for cost, that's not impressive, you know? So on paper, it looks okay, but you are one of the highest income earners, or the highest income earner out of 2,677 sales professionals. So how the hell do you do that? And what do you feel attributed to performing at such a high level? Like, I mean, that's $1 billion company now. So to be recognized as a top, yeah, it's huge, right? So what do you feel, I guess, when did that transition take place, and what were some of the things you took away from that experience at Leaf Filter?
Or the biggest reason that Leaf Filter is as big as it is, starting from a garage, right? You know, Scott didn't invent that product, right? But he was doing it better than anybody else was doing it. He developed a system that was extremely duplicatable. So he was able to implement that system, take that system, put it in person A, person B, person C, and they were able to duplicate that, and it grew exponentially, right? That's how I started. When I got the Leaf Filter, they had a CD. So I knew that I could work harder and outwork those people. When I got that CD of Chris Cunahan, I vowed that for 6 months, I wasn't going to listen to any music. I was going to listen to that over and over and over and over again. You know, being out there, you were out there in the field at one time, you know that there's times when you take a nap in that field as well. Guess what was still playing? In the background. Chris Cunahan was still playing over and over and over again. I was a Chris Cunahan protege, right? I kind of plateaued at an income level doing it the way Chris Cunahan was doing it. I started to tweak it up. And instead of having objection overcoming, I started to implement objection prevention. Nowadays, when people ask me, Bobby, how do you overcome this objection? Yeah. You know, we know all the new school and old school overcoming objections. We know them by heart, right? We all learned all of Rick's right? But my question is, how many objections do you get, especially in the home improvement industry? There's just, 5 common ones, right? So my question is, instead of asking yourself, how can you overcome the objections, how can you include those objections in your presentation, right, to do objection prevention? So I implemented that big time, and creating a little bit of a more efficient presentation, masterful presentation that has a little more direct steps. Like I would build the value, and I learned this from Rick. You always had consumer reports, and you had, the recommendation for window pricing and this one. I did that same thing and developed that with a kill kit.
That's constantly was preached to me by Rick over and over is the best way to overcome any objections, to bring it up first and overcome it proactively. And that's the way any successful sales system should be engineered. And I'm glad you brought this up, because this is a step in the sale that I feel is more often today, more than it definitely should be, skipped. That whole industry options section, we call it evolution, taking them on that shopping spree. Literally, whatever you're selling against or whatever you deem to be your competition, you want to overcome and fulfill that innate desire for them to want to educate themselves and look at the industry options, because ultimately I want their informed consent, right? I don't want to feel like I'm strong-arming them into something when they don't feel like they got to do their due diligence. So the kill kit, the kill book, coming in fully armed to take them on this world-class shopping spree, and ideally have the prospects come to their own conclusions that you are the best overall solution for what they're looking for, right? So that way you leave the sales encounter, them not feeling they were sold windows or gutter protection. They feel like they bought it on their own will, their own accord.
With their assistant buyer. Yeah, exactly. Right?
Guidance counselor. Yeah.
In one of the things as well, there's multiple things. That's the other thing. People will come and say, hey, what's the one thing? What's the one regular advice, right? There's not one thing. There's not a silver bullet. Another thing that I incorporated was the quality of my questions, right? Because we know that questions are the answer to the sale, right? So me asking questions along the way, because telling is selling, right? We want to try to form a question to answer what we want them to tell them, what we want to tell them. We want them to tell that to us.
Yeah, because I always preach anything you say is an opinion. When they say they own it, it becomes part of their belief system, right?
Yeah.
So if I want to be an agent of influence, direct them in the direction in which I want them to go, have them formulate a new belief system, that's getting them to talk by asking the right open-ended questions, getting them to open up. And this is what AI is telling us now. We're doing a lot of data research on this stuff, that the top 1% of sales performers are asking at least 5 times more questions than average salespeople are. Absolutely. And they ask questions in a linear fashion, because a lot of sales reps, they do okay in the initial discovery when they're first getting to know the person. Maybe they do a survey or a needs assessment. But then, like a lot of companies' warranties, the questions prorate, they drop off a cliff. Yeah. As soon as they put their sales hat on, now they're just talking at them for an hour, and no one's going to put up with that. Right. And it's like in one ear, out the other. Then they're wondering at the negotiating table why it seems like nothing you talked about was retained by this person. Yeah. That's because they tuned you out an hour ago. Right. It's just, they don't care.
And I think that you got to earn the right to ask those questions as well. In that discovery or that approach, you have to establish the proper rapport, and you have to establish yourself as the consummate professional in that industry. Once you've accomplished those 2 things, then you can continue to ask those questions, because I think everything should be a question. Yeah. Even, we've all dealt with Made in the USA. Back in the day, presentation books were flipping the charts. The kids love to use the digital stuff these days. I still love the flip charts. Listen, maybe it's because I'm old. I don't know. But even that first one, right? Hey, let me ask you this, Dom. How important is it to you that a product is made here in the good old US of A?
It's very important for me.
Instead of...
Yeah, imported from overseas or from China or something like that. Yeah.
Now, a lot of people these days, they're going to show that first part and they say, yeah, and just so you know, everything we have is made in the good old US of A. Do you know if they care about whether it's made in the USA? No. You don't. And a lot of people are indifferent to that these days. I want to ask them a question. Yep. I heard something really interesting from a Navy SEAL who got into sales and really high ticket sales, right? And he had a philosophy of submarine quality question closing, right? And he would call it, he would say, shut the hatch with a question to make sure those floodwaters don't come into the next section, right? So asking a quality question during the company credibility, and you've closed that hatch, and they've answered it for you. Moving on forward, whatever your next slide would be, asking a quality question and closing that hatch. So those floodwaters of that issue doesn't come back in, right? You get halfway down the submarine, you got all those hatches closed from company credibility to made in the USA or whatever it may be. Make sure you're asking those quality questions. And at the end, I feel like our goal in sales is to segue seamlessly and painlessly as an assistant buyer from the pain of purchase to the pleasure of ownership. And the more seamlessly we can do that with alternative questions, I have 3 types of customers: check, credit card, and, easy pay. What type of customer you think you'd be today, Dom? A check customer, a credit card customer? Or are you just like most everybody else I talk to? You'd at least want to hear just more about how these easy pays work at 0%.
Yeah, so I like the way you're saying those hatches. And one thing I like doing when I do live sales trainings, who in the audience agrees that asking questions is one of the most important foundational elements of being an effective sales professional? Like everybody agrees, right? So now who in the room feels they got a really good way of selling the importance of being an insured contractor? Like obviously when you're stepping foot into your prospect's property, your customer's property, being an insured and licensed contractor, let's just focus on insurance. Who has a good vignette or a good way that they sell the importance of that to their prospects? And I look at people that raise their hand. I'm like, good, why don't you come up? I'm John and Mary, or I'm John. You're the sales professional. Sell me on the importance of being insured. And they go through the little vignette, and inevitably what happens almost every time is there's no questions. Anything you say is an opinion. Anything they say, they own, it becomes part of the belief system. So I'm going to do the same thing now. I'm going to go through the benefits of being insurance. I want you to count how many questions I ask. Right. And normally when I do this vignette, it's like 25 questions just on that one topic of insurance. And it's just like this epiphany that they have, like, how far can you take this, right? Because I believe prospects are like icebergs. 80% of what I need to get to the root of is beneath the surface. And the only way to get to the root of that stuff is by asking questions, get them to open up. Yeah, keep this a conversation, right?
Sure.
What are some of the kind of recurring mistakes that salespeople or sales teams or sales leadership is making that you feel is holding them back or not basically allowing them to realize the high performance sales team that they dream, that they envision for themselves? Like, what are some of the common mistakes you see among sales organizations?
Yeah, I think that setting specific goals for themselves, I've got a individual client, I work with individual clients as well, where he wanted to make $250,000 in a year, right? It just seemed fantastical to him because last year, he's been with the company a couple years, and last year, I think he made $120,000, right? I don't think that they're planning enough because as a company or as a salesperson or any other adventure, you're always going to fall down to your highest level of preparation and goal setting and dissecting the math, right? So I said to him, okay, so here we are right now. You want to make $250,000 in a year. Let's break that down. We broke it down where he was at, how much you need to make per day of how much sales you have left. Broke it down, it was $1,000.
Yeah.
Right?
Seems very easy, right?
And this is the mindset of not having that planned out, and entrepreneurs do it all the time, right? They're just, home improvement companies all the time, but there's just no...
Shoot from the hip, make it up as we go.
From the hip, make it up as we grow. We broke down that math. Now, this kid, he has done, this first week, he did $11,000 in commissions. After his second week of 9 days, he has a total of $24,000 in commissions. So I said, I won't say his name, but I said, so if you're supposed to make $1,000 a day and we're 9 days in, and all you got to make $1,000 a day for 9 days in, what should you have been on track?
9,000. Yeah. He's crushing it. So raise the bar.
Are you ahead a little bit if you're at $24,000? Interestingly enough, I went through all of that different math, and then he said, I'm just grateful, but it just doesn't seem real. It just doesn't seem real. So that goes,
Programming is still overriding it.
and that's the overriding thing that I see is people need to understand the value and the balance of mindset versus skill set and both of those things. And I think a lot of them aren't really concentrating on either one. So it's the planning process and making sure that you've got the right mindset for the right skill set, which meets the right opportunity. When you got the right mindset and the right skill set, when you get to that opportunity, then you could take advantage of that opportunity, because 80% of this stuff that goes on with us, I believe, is psychology. 20% is the mechanic.
Yeah, success is the 6 inches between your ears, as Grosso always preached. And it floors me, Bobby, when I'm talking to sales teams. I ask individual sales reps, what are your stats? Where are you at for the year for demo rate, close rate, average sale, retention, NSLI? What are your numbers? And they can't even tell me their own numbers. Like, forget the company, but what you personally, where are you at? Where are you going? So they don't have a target. They have no idea even where they're at. How the hell do you expect to achieve any goal if you don't know where you're going, right? Absolutely. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. You're trying to shoot blindfolded in the dark. So again, we have the definition of success that I got from Rick. It's like you are successful, you have a definite, worthwhile written goal with a precise date, and you're presently moving towards it. You have to have a definite, worthwhile goal in writing, give yourself a deadline, and like you said, break it down step by step. One of the first things I'd have any sales class do, I want everyone to come back tomorrow with a vision board. And I'm not talking an app on your phone. I'm talking get the cardboard, cut it, or the canvas. Yep. Cut it out, print off pictures from the internet, whatever it is that you envision for yourself, whether it be short-term, long-term, any of the things that you aspire to be or aspire to have in your life, put it on there. Again, no filter, get vulnerable, put it all out there, and we're going to break those down with the whole team tomorrow. Excellent. And it was an assignment. It wasn't optional. Mm-hmm. But it's crazy, like that vision board, once they had clarity on what's important to them, and what surprised me every time I did this is how selfless a lot of their goals were. You know, I want to help my mom or help my grandma or want to take my, spouse, this, that. It was obviously stuff about themselves, but also a lot of selfless things. And I'd have sales reps explaining that to their peers, and it actually brings them to tears because of how much this matters to them. Now that you have your why before you fly, now that you have your vision board created, how much easier is it for you now to drag your ass out of the bed in the morning and know the purpose for what it is that you're doing every single day? Having clarity on what it is that I'm working towards. And now that what gets measured gets achieved. Now measure it relentlessly every single day and hold yourself accountable. Have a daily sense of urgency. So we always had the mantra, you're only as good as your last sale. You're only as good as your last sale. So what can I do today to progressively realize my goal and my vision for my future? And obviously today is the number one most important thing I need to focus on. But then if I'm eclipsing my goal, like you said, then be willing to raise your bar, because I can promise you, the most important sale you have to make is selling yourself to yourself. And we have a tendency as human beings to sell ourselves short.
We do.
Rick always, he's like, you're twice as good as you think you are, and that's only half the truth. And that's only part,
Yeah.
So that's the truth of the matter. If I'm going to have any success getting people to trust me and love me and like me and believe in me, I need to love, like, and believe in myself. 100%. So, and then I can transfer that energy onto everybody else.
Absolutely. And that is part of people understanding and breaking down the math for how important it is them to invest in themselves.
Right.
I mean, if you're making money, part of that money should be going back into your business. If you're an independent sales rep, you now have a franchise, right? And you need to put money back into that franchise. Me Incorporated, when people hear about 5, 10, 15, really, you have a $25,000 program? Well, I mean, let me ask you this. If you're making $125,000 right now, right, and you get on track to make the $250,000, if you could assure yourself you wouldn't fail, would you spend $25,000 to make another $125,000? Why would that not make sense? I don't know what the percentage is on that. You're smarter than me. You probably know it already, right? 25 to 125, right? That's a pretty small investment to get that back. That's probably one of the biggest obstacles because people want their ears tickled. As consultants, right, when you come in as a consultant and you consult with somebody, they want you to tell them what they want to hear. They don't want you to disrupt what they already think is going on. A salesperson is the same way.
I love doing that.
Now I can't remember if we talked about it beforehand or now. If I wanted to be the best basketball player I wanted to be, that I could possibly be, and I had some money, right? And who would I go to be the best basketball player? Bobby, who doesn't play basketball, or Michael Jordan I try to mimic, right? Or if I wanted to box and I had the money and Mike Tyson said, listen, I will take you under my wing and I will show you how to do exactly what I'm doing, you would probably be more than happy to give that up for him, right? Exactly. Now, people have a different paradigm shift when it comes to sales, right? If you know, Tony Robbins talks about mirroring and modeling, finding somebody who's doing what you're doing and doing it well, and mirror and model them for your shortcut, right? And that's how you're going to have success. And you talked about setting goals, very similar. And when you do that, you got to set those goals accordingly to get to that target of 250 or 350,000. So what I get more out of sales training is the coaching part of it. We're going to take a look at what did you do right and how much more often can we do that right, and how can you intentionally keep doing that to make more money, to have freedom, because money is freedom, right? I loved your video. You know, I've been following you for a long time. You know that. I've been a big fan for a long, long time. I loved your video on courage.
Yeah, secret to happiness.
Secret to happiness.
So, of course, now you've had a tremendous career, and now we're into training and consulting, next level sales mastery. So what does next level mean, and what are some of the things that set your training apart, you feel, from everyone else?
There's one thing that really clearly, definitely separates me from anybody else out there. The difference, and I got this from you guys because I saw Nick advertising something where he said something about we are industry leaders that are in the industry of home improvements right now. We use this system and we have a successful home improvement business doing this system. And now we're going to show you how to do the same thing. I stay in the trenches. I have a company that allows me to come in and take a couple appointments and sell them when I want to, pick the day I want to sell them, pick the day I don't want to sell them. They're highly impressed. They understand what I'm doing, you know, and why I do it. So I am in the trenches, right? Like you guys were having the leading home improvement company and having a Grosso program that supported that company, right? This is not theory, right? A lot of people these days, they're creating a vacuum where they got these sales systems, right? Where the people that graduate from the sales systems sell their sales system and then sell their sales system, right? I'm in the trenches. So the things that they're experiencing, we can talk about, right? The things that I experience, we can talk about. The things that I'm training these people on, I'm still achieving that success. And if I took those couple sales or few sales that I make in a week and the commissions that I make on those, and I multiply those out in those factors, it's still going to be that $400,000 or $500,000 in a year. Because the biggest year I had at Leaf Filter, I only finished out at like 7.5 months at close to $400,000 in commission. That's astronomical in the home improvement business.
Especially, I mean, that's not a huge average ticket, you know?
And it's not the average ticket. My ticket was higher, but it was about $7,800.
Yeah, you're not talking about a $20,000, $30,000 roofing job.
Oh yeah, and you're not talking about back in the day when I was doing windows at $12,500. Mm-hmm. And I think what also separates it is how I can pull specific parts out of that presentation, because most of the time they're given a book, right? And maybe they get a couple days or a 4-hour thing and say, go out there and get them, right? There's no accountability to it. So it's those specific things that we implement and really breaking down the masterful presentation to steps and implementing those steps one at a time. Maybe not in order, because often I will train them on a masterful approach, releasing that dopamine and bringing down that sales resistance, and I'll train them on that. Then I'll train them on the close, right? And the 3-option close that I mentioned with you, check, credit card, easy pay, right? Because the ultimate goal in my mind is to bridge that gap between the pain of purchase and the pleasure of ownership. Now, if I've taught them those two things, and what are the odds that they're going to believe that that works when they already see my stats, when they know what I did at Lead Filter, when they know that yesterday I took 2 appointments and 3 days from now I'm going to take 2 more. Instead of people that aren't that great will stop doing what they're doing and start teaching it.
Yeah, those that can't do teach. Yeah. And this is what's important. The best way to lead is by example, right? It gives you genuine authenticity that can't be replicated.
Yes.
That actually leads me to an important topic. When I was a sales leader at Mad City, I would get these salespeople that maybe had 20 years of sales experience, maybe had their own version of a sales process that they're used to following, or maybe they came from another company. Yeah. And occasionally they're skeptical of our process. They're skeptical of the system. And it was important for me, not that I mandated they followed the system, but they genuinely believed in it. They believed in it, they could work. And how do I get these guys bought in? I get them bought in by leading by example, leading from the front lines. You watch me follow this system step by freaking step to a T, record me on your phone, whatever you want to do. I want to show you how easy the close is. And when they see the sale being followed step by step and the homeowner's eating out of your hand and the close is the natural conclusion, now they're like, okay, the epiphany happened, I'm bought in. What else can you teach me, Dominic? Now you've earned that street credibility as a leader. Now they're going to follow you. So I think that's important, whether you're a sales leader, you do sales training or consulting, is that you have that genuine real world experience and people can sense that and they appreciate that. Now they're going to be receptive to your coaching and advice.
Absolutely.
And I get sometimes companies are like, we want your sales training. I'm like, great, I'm flattered about the opportunity. Who's your sales leader? Who's overseeing the sales team? Okay, great. Before your sales team even looks at any of this stuff, leadership first has to go through all the training. They have to get tested out and certified. They have to master this. And more importantly, they have to believe in it. Otherwise, you're wasting your freaking time, because you're never going to just throw a sales training program at your team and hope it sticks if the coach doesn't know the damn playbook. Like, you're trying to coach a command team with a new sales process, you don't know the plays.
Right.
So that's where I start, is leadership, right? Leadership, whether it's an owner of a small company that's overseeing the sales team, or if they do have a full-time sales leader, let's make sure you master the playbook, that you believe in it wholeheartedly, you can actually execute, because that leader has to be able to lead by example. And
It does.
get in the house and demonstrate, because I'm a big believer in performance sales coaches. Somebody that can do a demonstrational ride-along, demonstrating exactly how to do it.
Yeah, because they have to buy into it mentally first. It's like, I tell people that, I interview my clients, especially my independent clients, one person, because I won't have a failed client, somebody that didn't apply it, didn't show up, right, that I got to chase down, that's not listening to my accountability, that I can't have. So they got to buy into it first, for sure. And I've had opportunities where I was just like, nah, that's not going to work out. That's not going to work out. If the reason that your sales were down is because of install and because of this and because of that and blame, I learned a long time ago that you must at all times, as a man, or as a sales leader, or as an entrepreneurial leader, take full responsibilities for all your actions, and the buck stops with you. If you don't, you cheat yourself of the ability to make change in the future by being empowered by your future choices, right? It's when you take full responsibility for a man at all times, no matter what, even when it's tough, right? Even when it's tough, that you empower yourself to make positive choices and make change. Because if you blame everybody else for your problems and it's all externally based, you can't take ownership of what? Right. You can't take ownership when you're making positive choices for change in the future. And so I don't take on clients that the reason that their sales are down is because of install and a bad manager and this and that, the other thing. When they understand that it's skill set and mindset, then they have an opportunity to make that change. And they have to accept the fact that they are their biggest resource. Once again, they got to put money back in their franchise, right? And you got to understand it's not necessarily, what you're doing, but what are you doing wrong? What are you not know that you don't know, right? I hear that from my clients all the time. You know, I learned stuff I didn't even know, and now I see I'm getting those ones that are on the edge, right? That's what it's all about. Especially nowadays when a lot of companies are providing great appointments and leads. So it's easy to really think you know what you're doing because, you know, 180 is now the 100.
I actually preach this. I say one of the worst things that can happen to salespeople is having reasonable levels of success doing it wrong.
Yes.
That's
Because you can get great at doing it wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially, you know, I had a salesperson at one time where they had a $20K deal where 2 days after they left the home, after I had told him, you know, listen, you got to close that deal the first time, every time, and forget about follow-up. This is the one call close business. No follow-up, right? How do I follow up? You don't follow up. There's no such thing. You're done the day that you're there. 2 days later, somebody called back. He got like a $28K deal. I took him in my office and, you know, I just wanted to tell you, Tony, I'm really sorry that happened to you. Yeah, exactly. I'm really sorry that happened to you because now the potential exists that you're going to be looking for unicorns at every home.
Obviously, a lot of amazing wisdom, priceless information. I love that you're still in the trenches, still learning, still growing, still staying green. That just shows me you got a real passion for what you do. And Next Level Sales Mastery seems like an amazing program. I guess if people want more information on your training, your coaching, I guess what's the best way to contact you?
I have a phone number. You see, I had two phones there, right? Exactly. You probably were looking like...
You can call yourself.
yeah, like that song, right? I got two phones. I forget his name. But yeah, one of those is designated just for Next Level Sales Mastery clients and people calling. I have certain hours that I'm available. You would think it's crazy, but it's 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., Monday through Saturday. And those clients can call me. That's part of the program, part of what I offer as well. But you can call me on that line, and it is 608-514-2043.
Yeah, we'll put that on the screen for everybody, too, so they can see that.
Yeah, text me is always better, but you can text or call me there.
So amazing stuff. Well, congrats to you. It's always a pleasure, especially meeting a fellow student of Rick Grosso himself.
Yes.
And again, similar to my story, you're taking the Grosso foundational training and you continue to build and build and build. And that's what I encourage any salesperson to do, right? Take the foundational training, make sure the foundation is bulletproof and rock solid, and then continue to build and build because there's no limit to what you can achieve in this business and in this sales profession. It's truly uncapped, unlimited. So again, another incredible episode of the Profits for Sanity podcast. So make sure you tune in each week. Make sure you subscribe. Keep following us every single week. We're going to be dropping new videos from the brightest minds in the industry. And this episode absolutely did not disappoint. So as always here at Grosso University, yes, you are a closer.
Yes, you are a closer.
All right, we'll see you on the next one.